So here we are again, back again with just yet another episode. So I want to pick up from where we left. Here we'll continue trying to just add more tests. So like we said, we want to see if we can undo multiple email jobs in batch. So, and in this case, as expected, we'll just create data. We can just have these two. The more interesting setting, you might want to do something like this. Array dots, from, and then just have it return this. Maybe 5, just use like 5, and just have each of them return this. They are going to be different job data. So I think there's something else I'd like to do here. Let me just add this here. So, and we can just go on we can call create on it, and then we should expect to get back we should expect that the queue had this to have been called 5 times. Actually, in batch creation, we should still expect it to be called once, but in that case, it means we ought to have these sort of. So basically, I've seen a need for improving the flow. So for batch creation, we can easily do this. So right here, you see we just did this step where we kind of slugify stuff, but for batch creation, we can create multiple jobs and then add them like to the batch, if that makes sense. So right now we are not doing that, which means this is not the most optimal step. If we had used add bulk, for example, which is what we normally use for this, you see it says adds an array to this method may be faster than adding one job at a time in a sequence, which is actually the case. So it's going to actually be a bit faster, so which can add up. So for now, that's like something I've seen, which I can decide to optimize if I want to, and that's like one of the beauty of testing. You get to see some things you didn't take note of before that you could optimize. So in this case, I'm just going to check if it was called 5 times, because that's how many times we just did this. So I'm going to kind of make it much more dynamic. So let me just do it's called data.length times, and then we can then start checking stuff. So we check this. We should check the result. What's the length of what we are getting back? So in this case, yeah, I think practically that's all we have. That's what we need to just check. Yeah, I think we should be good to go with this one. Five is actually a lot when it's balanced. If we are doing load testing, could have just used 2 or that fork, fine, but it doesn't matter anyways. so sleepy today. I don't know if it's I should call it a blessing or a curse because things I wanted to do today and then I was just sleeping for the most part. So it passed. An interesting thing we can do is to still confirm that because we've just checked the lengths, right? What about the data that is in there? Normally we've stopped what the q.hard returns, so meaning we can we are very sure of what we are expecting to get back. So we're just expecting to get get back 5 copies of that thing, right? And so that way we can do something like expect results to or let me even do something like this, so I can just look through like each result. So I'm just going to call it job. I don't think I need the index. So in this case we can check expect job to have this, and then we can also check that the status is waiting. So basically this is what we can check for. So it should still work very properly, and the cool thing is that this is very dynamic, so there's no like any dummy stuff. So if I want to reduce this, I can just reduce this to 2 if I want to make the test faster, and we're still going to get like the same behavior, right? So yeah, that's the cool thing about it. I hope my voice is even audible. Hopefully it is. And since we already know what each of these things should return back, right? We can, that's looping through the stuff gives us this kind of sense of, okay, this is what we expect, this is what we expect, this is what we expect. So in a maybe more interesting scenario, you might even want to try to slice this so that you reduce how many things you look through. So for example, if we add 50, looping through 50 to check each of them is pretty slow. So you might want to slice it and just pick the first one to determine if we're on the right track. So you might want to do something like that. So yeah, it's still passed. So we just tested for creates method. I think we are not really done exactly. Another thing I want to check for is that it generates like unique job ID, because we actually check for that here. We ensure that we took the subject of the data, like the subjects, like the email subject. So at least we know that we can use the subjects. So we take that subject. Most time the email subject is usually, like in most cases, it's usually unique, like you don't have it repeating itself. So we took that, then we slugify it. So slugifying it means we just turn into this kind of parts, like URL parts or something. So for example, if the subject was maybe application for front end developer, it's still going to be application for front end developer, but we'll strip off all the spaces and we'll just replace it with hyphen. And since we set lower to true, it means every character case, every character is going to be lowercase, and if there's any space before at the start of the subject and at the end of the subject, they are going to be removed just in case. Now there are scenarios where the subject might be where the two subjects might occur. So maybe there's already one job on the queue with one particular subject name, and then another one comes in, right? We attach the timestamp so that we can ensure that those two jobs are unique. we can kind of still leave it this way so that in case another subject comes in, it's just going to overwrite the first one if we want to do it that way. But for now, we're just assuming that those two subjects are two different things and or two different entities. There might be scenario, maybe the job, like the job, maybe the job was just a duplicate of the previous one. So they basically have like the same subject, and you don't want to send the email twice. Actually, I've seen that happen with one of like the fintech apps, like the mobile banks in Nigeria, where I get emails twice. Like so, like there was a period of time I get emails twice, one email twice every time. So it's something we can actually try to avoid, but we're not interested in all that now. So the idea is just to ensure that this ID is unique. That's what we just care about for now. So we can do that and just say, okay, it generates a unique, oh, luckily this guy knows what we want, a unique job ID. I'm just going to say you should generate unique job IDs using slugified objects, subject and timestamp. So in this case, as usual, we get our data, create the mock stuff. Let me see if we can follow. Let me see if we can follow what this guy just suggestion he gave me is not what I want. In fact, in this case, I don't care about the results. So I can just get the code, like the argument that was passed during the call to the queue.add, so I can get the arguments that were passed, and I can just check the first one. Remember there are two, so I can somehow check the first one. And check if it includes test email subject. Now, doing this would not work currently because of one thing. When we go back to like where this thing is being generated, subject is generated, like we don't even know what the subject is. So, but luckily we have this overrides which we can use to kind of customize what the subject should be. So in this case, I can have this test email subject this way, and so we expect it to include this. In fact, I don't know. Let me see. There should be. Actually, wish there was something that's, something that tells me if whether I start with one thing or the other. So we just check like if we include that. That is the first argument that is passed to this job, which is the job name, which is what we slugify. We are checking the argument to see if it includes test email subject, which is basically the slugified version of the subject. We don't know the timestamp, so we cannot figure out what timestamp would have been used. So, but then we know that this is what it should start with. So we can test for that. Actually, I should know that. I knew that it works, so it seems I will stop testing until I'm done writing all the tests before I run the tests. Because I'm actually tired of, running the tests up and down. So another thing we've not even been able to test for was the attachments. Even when we were using the courier service in the user service to kind of send the email, we didn't check for the, we didn't have to like use the attachments feature of the courier service. So yeah, we can get to test it even if we didn't get to use it. So that way we are sure that it works as expected. So we have 9 tests so far, progressing right. So next thing I should check for is undo attachments correctly. So in this case, we have create mock data. So I'll have attachments. Well, luckily we didn't even care about what we are passing, so it doesn't really matter. So here we can say, okay, file name test.pdf, and somehow we need the URL. Is it even URL or what is it that we even pass? Paths, file name, content. So we can send content this way just to test off. We can generally just do paths. In fact, I don't know, I feel like I could get Faker to actually undo this. So with the common system, this thing give me like common file name, just generate like a random file name with a given extension, so I can even provide the extension I want. So in this case, PDF. So if I provide it with the extension I want, I can pull it out and then just make it take over everything here. So that way, yeah. So and then you can still have Faker. The bad part is I actually don't want to use a file type, a file path. I want to use more like a URL. So let me see, I can go to location. Oh, sorry, wrong kind of location. I had a different sort of location in mind. So I can go to internet. So it's going to generate a random HTTPS URL, so we can just use that. I can decide to add one more. So this time we can say let it be JPEG, let it be TXT, and then we just do the content as paragraphs, not even paragraphs. So like let it have multiple paragraphs. And for this we can pass min and max, like how many paragraphs we want and what the separator should be. Separator by default should be new line. So minimum is 3, maximum is, well, not set. So yeah, that's fine by us. Then we have the data. So the next thing we want to do is to create it and then do the same thing we did above. That is get the arguments for the core, basically. So just like we did it here, we get the arguments for the call, and first check that uh, so let me see, am I on track? Yeah, so remember that this is the arguments we passed, and this is the first one, which is data. So that way we can do something like expect call args 1 to have, so that call args 1 is the data, so, and the data is an object, so we can just check, does it have property of attachments, because that's what matters to us. So we don't have to check any other thing. We can just check if that's the property of attachments before we now go on to check for stuff. So at least we know that once we check that it has the property of attachment, if it doesn't, it's going to fail at this point. We can still now go further to assert that. Okay. Now for this collards 1, we can take the attachments and take the first item of the attachments, just to verify that it has the property we want. So we can check, does it have property file name, so basically we can check for this. Oops, okay. Using too much any around at this time, but then I know what I'm expecting, so I don't mind. I don't mind. And successfully. So there we have it. I think that should make the end of the create method test suite. managed to test for different stuff, which makes a lot of sense. Maybe there are some edge cases we've not tested for, probably. Actually, not even probably. That is, there's a high chance there is. But we've actually set up this test, and kind of somehow we are more confident that yes, this create method does what we expect of it, right? So the weird thing about the way we are testing so far is, since we are testing like what is being passed to the stuff, like it's like we're looking at some of the implementation details in the process because we stop things, right? It means that if somebody decides to change this to something else and the test doesn't fit that, it's going to actually cry out. So it's also kind of helped to set this standard that, see, you can't just edit this. Do you know what this is that what this does? So yeah, that's kind of an idea of what it does. I don't know if I was able to explain that properly, but there we have it, and that makes the end of this episode. I don't know what else we need to test, but I think we still have methods to test. So we can move on to testing them in the next episode. Thank you.